Matterport announced it was going to be acquired by CoStar this morning in a massive deal. The premium is one of the biggest I have ever seen, over 200% from where shares closed on Friday. And there's potentially more upside from where they're trading early on Monday morning. So I want to get into all the details, what this buyout looks like, what investors are going to get, and why CoStar may be interested in buying Matterport. My name is Travis Hoium. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video's sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they'll give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. Let's first start with the stock chart because I think this is what's really shocking about this deal. You can see that shares are up 156% early on Monday morning and just going from $1.74 to close on Friday to now $4.90 was the peak today. And it's potentially going to go higher because the buyout price was actually about $5.50 per share. I'll get to some of those details, but just wanted to put this into some context. You can see that shares have not traded anywhere near $5.50 per share over the past year, over the past 6 months. And we have to go all the way back to mid-2022 to when shares were trading at that kind of price. So a massive premium for shareholders. But let's get into exactly what the deal's details are. So if you're not familiar with CoStar, CoStar is the company that runs apartments.com, homes.com, a lot of great potential use cases for Matterport. I've always thought that a company like CoStar or Zillow should actually buy Matterport and just integrate it into their offerings. So you got to wonder, given the price, was there some sort of bidding war behind the scenes between particularly those two buyers? Because those are the companies that this kind of money for this kind of acquisition would be very possible. So total acquisition price, approximately $2.1 billion in enterprise value. Shareholders are going to receive $2.75 in cash, so more in cash than shares were trading for on Friday. And we'll get another $2.75 in shares of CoStar common stock. So that's why the price of shares now trading somewhere between $4.70 and $4.90, depending on when you're watching this on Monday. There's significant premium on top of that because if this closes as planned, shareholders are going to get about $5.50 per share. One of the things that they talk about here that I think could potentially be really valuable for both companies is the integration into things like apartments. Now, this is an area where CoStar is growing, where Zillow is trying to grow, but being able to go and tour an apartment digitally, that could be really valuable for apartments.com, particularly to have under their umbrella. Now, what we don't know from this release is exactly what's going to happen to Matterport's technology. Is it going to be more closed off and under the CoStar loop, or are we going to have third parties be able to use it the way that Matterport would be building more of a horizontal software as a service platform? So that's not really clear today, but clearly CoStar is seeing a lot of value. I wouldn't be surprised if Matterport continues to operate as kind of its own separate business under CoStar. That's the way that they've operated a lot of these companies, and they have a bunch of different divisions basically. So it's very possible you still see Matterports pop up in Airbnbs, on Zillow, on places that may actually sort of be competing platforms, but obviously will be owned by CoStar today. There are a couple of other details that are important. 15% of Matterport's shareholders are directors, officers, and certain stockholders is what they say, and they plan to vote for the transaction. So that's going to be a pretty significant push towards this deal actually closing. And the transaction has a 10% symmetrical collar for CoStar's shares. That just basically means that if CoStar's shares trade within 10% of $86.02, then that's the value that investors will get from Matterport. Transaction is expected to close this year, so relatively quickly in the next 8 months or so. And this brings an end to Matterport being a public company. So I think a really surprising deal, given the fact that Matterport is just starting to make a lot of progress in its own core business. But clearly CoStar is seeing the need to add this sort of technology to its platform as Zillow makes a bunch of other acquisitions and things like showing time and tools for agents. So very different business models being deployed here, and Matterport could be a differentiator for CoStar going forward. Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. So on Monday morning, shares are trading at $4.70 as I'm recording right now. as I'm finishing up recording. So that means that there's about a 17% premium still to be had if you just hold on to shares until this deal actually closes. And as a shareholder, that's what I plan on doing at this point, just because that gap hasn't closed on. I don't see any reason right now that this deal is going to be blocked by regulators. CoStar should have plenty of cash to close the deal. And obviously the other piece of the transaction is in stock. CoStar's shares are actually up about 1.3%. So it doesn't seem like investors are reacting negatively to this transaction. And, this is a $35 billion company. So this isn't a massive transaction for them. And like I said, there's probably a lot of synergies between the two. So again, from the Matterport side, I'm going to just continue holding these shares until the deal closes. It sounds like that's going to be by the end of the year. And that's not a long time to hold for that kind of a premium. If the premium is only 3, 4, 5%, maybe I would consider just taking the gains that we see today off the table. And if the stock price changes and goes to $5.40 or something like that over the next few months, that may be exactly what I do. But there's still upside, despite the fact that this was a massive premium. Like I said, usually when transactions like this happen, the buyout happens at 30, 40, maybe even 50% above where the current stock price is. But in this case, the premium that CoStar is paying is over 200% from where shares closed on Friday. That is a huge deal and indicates that there was a lot of interest in acquiring Matterport by somebody. We don't know exactly who, but either Matterport just wasn't interested in selling itself and just said, hey, this is our price. We need a massive premium, or we're just going to stay a public company on our own, or there was some sort of bidding war in the background. That's, I think, the way to interpret this, just because the price was so shocking. Now, there are some interesting things that CoStar is doing in the real estate business. They own some real estate themselves, but they're also, like I said, building things like apartments.com and homes.com. So building a competing business to Zillow. This is going to be one of the things I'm going to need to follow a little bit more now that they're folding Matterport into the business. The company has a really interesting position in digitizing real estate and is actually leading harder into that disruption piece than Zillow is in a lot of ways. Zillow is really working with agents and kind of taking baby steps towards the potential disruption of people actually just listing their homes on Zillow. But maybe CoStar is moving in that direction even more. That could be really interesting now that they have the digital tools that Matterport's bringing to the table. So as sad as I am to see Matterport be bought as a public company, this is a phenomenal outcome for shareholders short term. And one of the things that I'm taking away from this is that there are, I think, a lot of opportunities in SPAC companies that came public, got a lot of cash from their SPAC partner, and then their stocks collapsed. Matterport, before this deal, was trading for about a $550 or $600 million valuation, and they had $400 million in net cash on the balance sheet. That means the business itself was only worth about $200 million. So as shareholders, our downside was relatively protected and it was all upside. It was an asymmetric potential stock. That is one of the reasons that I've covered it so much here on asymmetric investing, because I saw that upside potential. And if you can find stocks that fit that profile, you have relatively low downside risk and a ton of upside potential, even in the case of a buyout. So love to see this work out well for investors. And congratulations to everyone who is up almost 200% today on their shares of Matterport. Let me know what you think of this deal in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.